Hey there, I'm Anthony Romano, and this video is going to tell you about estrogenic foods and how they're ruining your fitness goals. So, this is a video I've been meaning to make for a while. I've spoken about this in plenty of other long videos, but I'm trying to make this one a little bit quicker solely on the estrogenic foods. And this is something that goes through my head whenever I'm looking at the ingredient list of a food label on a daily basis. So it's something that needs to be done and you need to know about because this is something that you are exposed to on a daily basis. Now, before I get into this video, if you could like the video, that will help me tremendously because what that will do is it will allow YouTube to show my videos to other people with similar interests to you. And that's all you have to do to help me out. And even if you see some more of my videos, if you want to watch them, watch them. If you don't. It's easy. So please do that, and also subscribe and follow my Instagram and go to my website, romanoketo.com, if you want to work one-on-one coaching. I also have programs coming out soon, books coming out soon, and I have plenty of other free videos you might enjoy as well. So let's get into estrogenic foods. What does estrogenic mean? First of all, it's something that's going to raise your estrogen artificially. This is a problem if you are a man or a woman. The most common problem, the most common way this gets into your diet is through phytoestrogens. That's one estrogenic compound. Phytoestrogens are plant defense mechanisms that are basically designed to deter predators from eating the food because plants want to live as much as you and I do. And in an evolutionary context, they don't have the option to fight or flee. So what they have to do is deter you from eating them by basically causing hormonal cascading effects that would make you experience, a higher likelihood of dying, a lower likelihood of surviving, something that would mess with you basically so that you are less likely to feel good and therefore want to eat the food again. So it is less direct than fighting or fleeing, but it is nonetheless a plant defense mechanism. It's not something that's found in animal products. However, animals that did eat phytoestrogen foods or estrogenic foods or estrogenic pesticides that were sprayed on their feed or were given hormones or antibiotics that are estrogenic can be exposed to this. So that's something you also have to be cautious of, which is why if you get animal products, you have to get them from high quality local sources. And of course, that's better for the environment, better for the animal itself, and it's also nutritionally way better for you. But let's get into more of these estrogenic compounds themselves and which ones are the most pervasive. So when we are looking at estrogenic compounds, a lot of them are chemicals, a lot of them are phytoestrogens. Let's get to the food sources first. Phytoestrogens are the ones that are in foods. And the most common sources of phytoestrogens are soy, flax, and miscellaneous other seeds and grains. The ones you mostly have to worry about, and if you just take one thing home from this video, it's be cautious whenever you eat soy or soy products, and also flax. Now, granted, is this something you have to lose sleep over? For soy, yes. For flax, it's still up there. There are studies on this, particularly from a book I recommend called Estrogen by Dr. Anthony J. That breaks down all the scientific literature on this, and that's where I'm spouting all this out off to you from memory, and from other books as well, but that book is the most research dense. So, and also credit to Dr. Anthony J. I like his work. So, soy. Soy is the most estrogenic food out there, and that means tofu, that means fermented soy products, soy oil, which besides the fact that processed oils are terrible for you and the most inflammatory foods you could possibly eat, so cut out vegetable oil entirely, seriously, entirely, not even for cooking, cut that out because of reasons separate from estrogen. But besides the fact, soy is the number one most estrogenic food, and that's like a bro science myth. Oh, soy will give you man boobs. But no, seriously, soy is the most problematic foods in terms of hormonal dysregulation and also in terms of inflammatory effects. So don't try to minimize soy completely, whether you're a man or a woman, okay? Flax is probably the next most estrogenic, but it's significantly lower than soy. Soy is like the top dog, 10 out of 10 most estrogen. Flax is probably around a 5 or 6 in comparison if I had to put a number on it. Now, does this mean that I will lose sleep if I eat something that has a little bit of flaxseed in it? No. There's plenty of recipes that I like because I do a lot of keto dieting for the past 9 years. Lots of other, clean food alternatives will have a little bit of flax. That's not something you have to worry about. However, if you are consuming flax oil, flax seeds on a daily basis, you are absolutely getting an estrogenic effect in some way from that. So I would recommend reducing that and treating flax like a food that is, on the whole, something that's just decorative in terms of the rest of your diet, just sprinkled in here and there, literally and figuratively. Soy, on the other hand, you want to minimize a lot. There's a picture I'm going to put up here that gives you basically a full visual of a lot of the estrogenic foods, and it's basically ordered in terms of like what's the worst to the lowest. So as you get lower, it's even more benign of an effect, but the top dogs are up on the higher part of this picture. And essentially, you can look at those foods, see which ones you're consuming on a daily basis, and get a better idea. But the ones that are the most problematic are soy and flax. Now, it will also say oats. Again, people already have habits in place to minimize the problematic effects of oats, such as overnight oats, soaking the oats, so you basically minimize the phytic acid content of the oats, which is an anti-nutrient that basically binds to minerals in your body and leaches them out. So, that doesn't mean, again, you need to lose sleep if you're having oats, but again, they're not something that humans would have been eating on a regular basis in terms of our evolutionary history, and that is another further logical reason behind why you want to be careful of certain foods that are on this list. Even coffee, for example, is slightly estrogenic, but again, it's something that's not, it's very benign. Beer, on the other hand, it is higher in these estrogenic compounds, but again, this is, if you're, having a beer every day or something like that, that's where it would become more of a problem. However, let's get into more so some of the effects that you could actually run into before I get into the artificial sources of estrogens. The effects you could run into from high estrogen are numerous, okay? The reason this is a problem is not necessarily because, people associate, oh yeah, you're going to lose all your gains from having estrogen. If you are a woman, this could severely mess with your hormonal cycle. If you're a man, this can absolutely ruin your testosterone-estrogen balance. It goes without saying. But another thing this does is when you artificially raise a sex hormone like estrogen, you are going to raise sex hormone binding globulin, which is basically the carrier of sex hormones, because they can't really just pass through the bloodstream without this carrier. So SHBG, when that's raised, that will basically bind to other hormones in your body, such as testosterone, and that will lower how much you actually have floating around in your bloodstream, free testosterone, for example. And again, because you have raised a sex hormone, the carrier is now in abundance as well because of that raise, and you will be having lower amounts of testosterone swirling around. Other problems like that and other dysregulations of that nature, because you raise one, the carriers have to raise, and then because they carry all the sex hormones, you will have downregulations in other ones that are obviously still important. So that's kind of the most simple way I could put that there in this short video. But let's get into the artificial sources, because this is where things are far more prevalent, more pervasive, okay? Just trying to pick cool words today. With artificial sources, the most problematic ones are artificial colors and dyes. So this is red number 40, yellow number 5, which is tartrazine. And basically, what these compounds are is they are chemically similar to estrogen, so they will act in a way that is similar to estrogen in the body. The body basically treats them the same. And this is different from the phytoestrogen, rationale, because phytoestrogens are defense mechanisms. These are chemical compounds that are added into foods because the FDA and other governing bodies believe they are benign, but realistically, they've only been around for so long that we don't have any long-term studies, yet we know how they operate and what their mechanisms are. So you absolutely must cut out artificial dyes and artificial colors from your diet. So whenever you get a pre-workout or a protein or something, you want this stuff to be as clean as possible. This is just a protein I have, and this is also my Azoth Total Focus Nootropic, which you can get a discount for down below. Fantastic natural nootropic supplement, brain supplement. But protein, for example, you do not want to see any artificial colors. You do not want to see any, of course, artificial sweeteners as well, but not because of the estrogen. You simply want to see the natural ingredients like whey protein isolate, natural flavor, cocoa powder, organic, sea salt, stevia extract, monk fruit extract, lactase. Very simple, bare bones. That's what you want. And the problem is, it's not actually from big supplements that you're balling out on that will be the primary provider of these compounds. It's more so from the everyday little tasks that slip underneath your nose, like grabbing an energy drink or a Gatorade or something that is sweetened and colored artificially. Those are the biggest sources, and those things will just cram on red number 40. It doesn't matter what you're drinking. If it's a giant company that has really high priorities on profit margins, they're going to try to use whatever's cheapest for them and gives them the highest margin. This is why you want to see things like beet juice concentrate, because, well, or beet juice powder. That will basically indicate that the company uses a natural source of red coloring rather than red number 40, which is something that is very problematic and estrogenic. So as far as the other complications of this, of course it's going to minimize your gains. Of course it's going to make you gain fat. But that, I'm going to get into the fat gaining because that is the last part of this video that I really want to hammer home here. When you have high estrogen, one of the purported rationales behind estrogen's purpose in the body is that part of its purpose is to make you gain fat to basically, provide for offspring. That's what the main purpose of estrogen is in women, because essentially what it allows them to do is build fat so that you have more nutrient stores for a child, for childbearing. And essentially when you give an animal, even a man, estrogen, we will gain body fat. Everybody will gain body fat when they have an overabundance of estrogen. And that's not to mean estrogen is bad for people entirely, because of course it is, it serves a purpose in the human body. But the main difference between men and women hormonally is not actually the testosterone, not actually the estrogen, it's the testosterone. The estrogen differences are very similar. Women, of course, have more, but the main difference in terms of hormones between men and women is actually the testosterone. The testosterone is dramatically higher in men than it is in women on average, and the estrogen amounts are slightly higher for women, and for men it's closer than it is to the difference between testosterone, is the point I'm getting at here. So if you think that estrogenic foods are not going to affect you, whether you're a man or a woman, they absolutely will. If you're a man, it doesn't matter if you're still below women in terms of average estrogen level, raising that will be problematic. If you're a woman and think that estrogen compounds aren't going to harm you, you have to realize these things, you are very close to a man in terms of how much estrogen you would have. Not very close, but close enough. And I know I'm not giving exact numbers here, but again, I have other videos that explain the research behind this. And of course, there's also that book I recommended, Estrogeneration. The other ways that estrogenic foods or compounds can get into your diet is through the more, lifestyle products that are out there. So this could be hairsprays, shampoos, deodorants, okay? Things of that nature. And the other way that it does get into our body is through the water supply. So again, there's also people taking artificial estrogen, estradiol, with the birth control pill. And what that will do is, in the water cycle, it's hard to actually remove estrogen because it is a sex hormone. It's hard to remove hormones because they are basically fat soluble, if I had to explain it. So for they're lipophilic. They attach to fats, and that's the best way they actually get into the body. That means they have a hard time swirling around in water and being removed from water. So even the water cycle can have a hard time clearing these things out, which is why you should get a good water filter. And also, you should avoid having, tap water on a regular basis, especially if you live in an area where that is not necessarily the best, because the water cycle is not going to simply clear out these estrogenic compounds, and you should simply try to get better quality water. Okay, plastic bottles and BPA and BPS, other bisphenols, can be estrogenic themselves, which is another reason why it's not a good idea to drink from plastic all the time or leave it out in the sun and drink it. Not a good idea. Try to get steel or glass bottles, and also get filtered water in there, perhaps reverse osmosis. But that's another way you have to avoid getting these estrogenic compounds in your life, and minimizing that as much as you possibly can. The main problem that this leads to is because hormones are lipophilic, what's going to happen is in your body, they're also going to be hard to remove. So they're going to basically naturally be attracted to fatty tissue, which is what everybody has. Even if you're at 5% body fat, absolutely shredded, your body is still going to have enough fat to attract basically where these hormones will want to go. And that is why they're obviously heavily stored in fat tissue. So one solution to this, besides cutting out the actual estrogenic sources, is try to lose body fat, but while you're removing those estrogenic food sources. That is the only way you can get rid of these things. And one way you will know for sure that you are, consuming too many estrogenic foods is where you store fat. Specifically in the chest area, if you're a man and you get man boobs, that's a surefire indication. And also, for some people, the way they store fat on the hips will also indicate how much estrogen they're consuming, but this varies more so because women have different hip and waist ratios than men do. Example, for a man, if they have an overabundance of fat on the waist but nowhere else, that's a heavy indication that they are consuming way too much estrogen. Also, varicose veins such as like spider veins, are another indication that there's too much estrogen. So that was basically the most brief I could make this video. You want to avoid those foods and chemical compounds I explained in this video. I mentioned them. You want to try to avoid looking at those, seeing those whenever you're buying any sort of food and you see it on the label, any sort of product, any sort of supplement, any sort of healthcare product. But again, for healthcare products, this is a whole nother video because a lot of these things are not listed on the label, or they'll have a name that's very difficult to, for you to understand, like bisphenol something, okay? That's another way that you will have to dive deeper down the rabbit hole to figure out for personal care products. But as far as food goes, that's one really big avenue you can minimize this stuff. Somebody might be watching this, you might be watching this and know that you consume soy, or you look at it, in a very benign manner, but it is a serious player in this game. And you have to be careful of it, and you absolutely have to avoid these foods and be cautious of them, because they are one way that cheap food products basically help support companies to make larger profit margins, because it's simply an easier product to produce, okay? And the downside of that is 80% of the food companies out there, or a lot of supplement companies out there, are probably not going to be as cautious as they should. They're going to try to do whatever they can to squeeze out the biggest margin. And the downside of that is when you have the larger mainstream audience, the input of what's going in there is going to be more watered down, okay? There's going to be things that are not necessarily focused to a niche audience that actually cares on these things, because they're trying to reach a large amount of people. They're trying to simply, have great advertising and get people to buy their products. Another thing too is that these compounds are technically listed under the category of obesogens, which means that they will literally make you gain fat independent of other variables. I have an entire video on this and I highly recommend you watch it. But as far as what this means, obesogenic, it means that by giving these compounds to an animal, they will gain fat and store fat almost instantly, because the purposes of estrogen, which I previously described. Cows and other, feedlot animals are given hormones and antibiotics that are estrogenic and obesogenic, because it brings a larger profit margin because there's more meat to sell, which is another reason why you should absolutely try to get high quality animal products if you eat them. So, and besides the fact that they're a great source of nutrition, and you want to, it would benefit you if you did have them. So that is another way you avoid this in terms of the meat eater perspective, I guess, because a lot of these compounds are more prevalent in processed foods and processed carbs, processed fats. Those things are far more risky when it comes to getting these compounds in your diet. So be cautious of these things. Hopefully this video informed you of them to the point where you feel comfortable going out and avoiding them next time you're out and about. My name is Anthony Romano. Like this video, subscribe, and follow my Instagram. And I also have a ketone supplement giveaway, which you can read the rules for in the description. Leave me some other questions. I'll do my best to get back to you. Peace.